I didn't plan on being in that bookstore twice in the same week. Honestly, I don't even read that much. Most of my shelves are just half-finished novels and greasy manuals for my motorcycle. But I was there again, standing in the narrow aisle that smelled faintly of dust and coffee, when she caught me. "Stop following me," she said, her voice low but steady. I froze, a paperback halfway pulled from the shelf. My ears went hot. The words weren't sharp, but they cut through me all the same. "I'm not." I started, then stopped. Her eyes, dark and steady, stayed on mine for a beat too long. There was something almost amused in them, but also tired. She was older, that much was obvious, though I couldn't have guessed her age right then. Mid-40s maybe? The kind of age where confidence doesn't need to be announced. It just lingers in how she stands, how she looks at you without blinking. So I said the only thing that came to mind. "Then stop leading me to you." It slipped out before I could catch it. Too honest. Too much. She raised an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth tugging, like she was weighing whether to laugh at me or walk away. She didn't do either. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, then turned back to the row of books. And just like that, I couldn't move. She wore a dark coat, the kind with buttons running down the front, and her hair, pulled back loosely, had strands that escaped and brushed the side of her face. I noticed the smallest things, how she tapped the spine of one book, then another, but didn't pull any of them free. How she sighed, barely audible, as if the act of choosing was heavier than the book itself. I should have left. Anyone else would have. But my feet stayed planted, and my hand still held the same paperback I didn't even want. "Do you read?" she asked suddenly, without turning toward me. Her voice wasn't unfriendly, but it carried something else, like she already knew the answer. "Not really," I admitted. My throat felt dry. "I try. I usually don't finish." She finally glanced back at me. That pause between us stretched again. Too long, almost unbearable. I shifted my weight, rubbed my thumb against the corner of the book like it would anchor me. And then, maybe out of mercy, she smiled. A small one. Brief. "Then don't start with Tolstoy," she said, tapping the heavy classic in her hand. It should have been nothing. A passing joke between strangers. But the way she said it, like she was letting me into something, even for just a moment, hit harder than I wanted to admit. The silence returned, thick enough that the hum of the ceiling lights suddenly seemed louder. She moved to another aisle, and I followed. No, drifted, like gravity had quietly shifted. I told myself it was coincidence, that I just happened to be interested in the same section. But when she stopped abruptly and turned, I nearly bumped into her. "You're doing it again," she said softly. I opened my mouth, but no words came. My chest felt tight, like I was caught. She shook her head, not unkindly, and stepped past me toward the register. I stood there with nothing in my hands but the book I'd been pretending to want. My pulse was too loud, and when she brushed past, just close enough that her coat sleeve grazed my arm, it was like someone had lit a match in the quiet. I didn't buy the book. I didn't buy anything. But the sentence I left with, the one I keep hearing even now, wasn't hers. It was mine. "Then stop leading me to you." And God help me, I meant it. The next time wasn't an accident. At least, not for me. I'd seen her through the window of the repair shop where I worked, struggling with a car door that wouldn't close properly. She was half bent over, jiggling the handle with that same quiet determination I'd noticed in her eyes at the bookstore. And before I could think better of it, I was already outside. "Looks like it's stuck," I said, too quickly, as if I'd been waiting for her. She straightened, surprised, and for a split second her face softened, then guarded itself again. "You work here?" "Yeah, sort of. Apprentice, I guess." I wiped my palms on a rag, nervous. "Want me to take a look?" Her hesitation was visible, the kind of pause that felt heavier than just deciding about a door. But then she stepped aside. "If you don't mind." I crouched, fiddling with the latch. The metal was stubborn, resisting, but it wasn't the mechanics that distracted me. It was her hands, resting against the roof of the car, fingers tapping an uneven rhythm like she couldn't keep still. Small things, but telling. "You tap when you're nervous," I said before realizing how it sounded. She froze, then gave a quiet laugh, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Do I?" I nodded, not looking up. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Silence stretched again. I focused on the latch, pretending not to feel the weight of her gaze. A minute later, the door gave way with a sharp click. I stood, brushing dust off my hands. There. Should hold for now. Thank you. She said it simply, but her voice was softer this time. More tired. That was when I saw it. The faint lines beneath her eyes, not just from age, but from sleepless nights. Something about that weariness struck me harder than the guarded strength she carried. You look. The word slipped out before I could stop it. I scrambled to fix it. I mean, you must be busy, or you don't get much rest. Her expression flickered. Vulnerability, quick and unguarded, before she pulled it back behind a small smile. Some things keep you awake. Doesn't matter how old you get. The way she said it, it wasn't meant for me. It sounded like something she'd told herself too many times. I wanted to ask what kept her awake, but I didn't. I just nodded, uselessly, as if I understood. When she reached for her purse, her hand brushed mine, by accident, I think. But neither of us moved right away. Her fingers were cool, mine too warm, and for a second that felt much longer than it was, neither of us looked away. She withdrew first. I should go. I stepped back, but the charge between us lingered, like static after touching metal. Yeah, I said, my voice lower than I meant. I'll see you around. She didn't answer, just gave a small nod, slid into her car, and drove off. But as I stood there watching the taillights fade, I knew the truth. I didn't want it to be the last time. It was raining the third time. Not the kind of rain that makes you run for cover. More like a steady curtain that blurred the streets and made everything smell like wet pavement and old leaves. She'd come by the shop late, long after most people would have called it a night. Said her headlights were flickering, and she couldn't risk driving home that way. I told her I'd check it. Truth was, I didn't mind the excuse. The place was quiet. Only the hum of the overhead light and the tap of rain against the corrugated roof. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me work. I pretended not to notice her gaze, though I felt it on my back like heat. You're here late, I said, twisting a bolt that didn't need twisting. So are you, she replied. Her tone wasn't sharp, but it wasn't soft either. Somewhere in between, like she wanted to keep the distance but couldn't help stepping closer. I glanced up. She wasn't wearing the coat this time, just a plain sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows. Her hands rested on the counter, bare, no rings. The sight stirred something I couldn't name, something I shouldn't even acknowledge. Do you always fix things for people after hours? She asked, a trace of humor in her voice. Only if they need it. I swallowed, tried to keep steady. Only if they ask. That earned me the smallest laugh, quick and fragile. But then, just as sudden, her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. She glanced at the screen, and her whole posture changed. Shoulders stiffened, lips pressed tight. She turned the phone face down without answering. I wanted to ask, but the word stuck. Whoever it was, whoever still had that power over her, it wasn't me. And maybe it never would be. She caught me looking. For the first time, her guard slipped just enough to show the exhaustion beneath. It's complicated, she said quietly, as if that explained everything. I nodded. Most things worth anything are. The rain grew heavier, pounding the roof like it wanted in. She moved closer, not by much, just enough that I could see the damp strands of hair clinging to her cheek. The kind of closeness where even the air between us felt dangerous. Don't, she whispered suddenly, almost to herself. Don't what? My voice was barely audible. Her eyes met mine, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just that. Her gaze, the rain, the silence that begged for something reckless. I leaned forward, just slightly, instinct warring with restraint. Every muscle in me screamed to close the space, to say something I couldn't take back. But then she stepped away, fast enough to break whatever spell had been growing. She grabbed her phone, her bag. The lights work now? She asked, steady again, though her voice was too tight. I forced myself to nod. Yeah, they'll hold. She thanked me without looking up, and when the door shut behind her, the storm outside didn't seem half as loud as the one she left in me. It wasn't planned, the way we ended up alone again. The shop had closed hours ago, and I was sweeping the floor just to have something to do. She came by to pick up her car. Routine, nothing more. At least, it should have been. But she lingered. The keys rested between us on the counter, untouched. Neither of us moved to take them, and the silence filled every corner of the room. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, too dark, too still. She finally broke it. This isn't normal. Her voice was quiet, but it hit like a hammer. I set the broom aside, slower than I needed to. What isn't this? She gestured vaguely, not at the room, but at the space between us. Whatever this is. I wanted to laugh, to pretend it was nothing. But I couldn't. My chest tightened, words stuck somewhere in my throat. We're not doing anything, I said carefully, though even as I spoke, it felt like a lie. Her eyes found mine, steady, unblinking. Then why does it feel like we are? The air thinned. I swallowed hard, but it didn't help. There was no script for this, no safe answer. I don't know, I admitted. She exhaled, almost a laugh, but not quite. You're too young for this. I should have let it in there. Should have shrugged, joked, given her the out she wanted. But something inside me rebelled against the distance she kept trying to build. Then why are you here? The words came sharper than I meant. Her lips parted, but no sound followed. For once, she had no answer ready. The silence between us deepened, charged. She shifted her weight, one hand brushing against the counter, then pulling back as if the surface burned her. I stepped closer without meaning to, just a few inches, but enough to change everything. I could see the tiny tremor in her hands, the way her jaw tightened like she was holding herself together. I don't know what you want from me, she whispered. I don't either, I said, and it was the truest thing I'd spoken all night. We stood there, caught in something neither of us could name. My pulse hammered in my ears, and her eyes, God, the way they lingered, felt like both a warning and a confession. Her voice finally broke the silence, so soft I almost missed it. You make me forget myself. The words hung in the air, heavier than any touch. And then, just as quickly, she took the keys and left. But that sentence stayed behind, echoing long after the door closed. You make me forget myself. I hadn't expected to see her at the diner. It was late, nearly empty, the kind of hour where the air smells like burnt coffee and tired waitresses move slower than the clock. I'd stopped in after work, greasy from the shop, just needing food before crashing. She was already there, sitting in a booth by the window, half hidden behind a mug. For a moment, I thought about turning around. But she saw me. Her gaze flicked up, caught mine, and she gave the smallest nod, permission, or maybe resignation. I slid into the seat across from her. You eat here often? I asked, trying for casual. Sometimes, she said. Her voice was worn thin, like it had already been used up that day. The silence stretched, filled only by the hiss of the coffee machine. I noticed the napkin she kept folding, over and over, until it was little more than a crumpled square. Then she said it, quiet, almost careless. You remind me of someone. I froze. She looked down at her cup, not at me. My brother. He died when I was 25. Motorcycle accident. Stupid, reckless. But he had that same way of looking at people. Like he saw more than he should. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, words lodged behind it. I never talk about him, she added softer now. But when you're around, it feels like he's in the room again. It's not fair to you. Her hands were trembling slightly around the mug. I'd never seen her like that. Not guarded, not in control. Just raw. I don't mind, I said finally, though it sounded thin compared to what she'd just laid bare. Her eyes lifted then, and for the first time, I saw something close to fear in them. You should. The waitress came by with a refill, and neither of us spoke until she left. The silence pressed in heavier now, like the rain that night at the shop. I think that's why I keep pushing you away, she admitted, barely above a whisper. Because you make me remember. And because you make me forget. Both at once. It should have been just words, but they knocked the air out of me. My chest ached with the weight of it. Her grief, her confession, the impossible tangle between us. I didn't reach for her hand. Didn't lean across the table. All I did was sit there, gripping the edge of the booth, trying to breathe through the shift I hadn't seen coming. When she finally looked at me again, Her eyes were glassy but steady. "Don't try to fix me," she said softly. I wanted to promise I wouldn't. But the truth? I already was. And that terrified me. It happened on a night that didn't ask for anything. No storm, no broken cars, no accidental run-ins. Just a quiet evening, the shop long closed, the two of us sitting on the steps out back where the concrete still held the day's heat. She'd stopped by, not with an excuse this time. Just stopped by. For a while we didn't talk. The street was empty, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. She had her arms around her knees, chin resting lightly on them. I sat a little apart, pretending to fiddle with a loose thread on my sleeve. Finally, she said, "I shouldn't be here." "I know," I answered. "But I am." I didn't say anything to that. What could I? She shifted, eyes fixed on the pavement. "You think I'm strong, don't you?" The question startled me. I turned, but she didn't look back. Her voice was steady, though her hands betrayed her, fingers knotting together, then pulling apart. "I'm not," she continued. "I get tired. I get scared. I'm not who you think I am." I let the silence sit for a long moment, because rushing it would have broken whatever fragile honesty she'd just given me. "You're exactly who I think you are," I said finally. "That's why I can't stop." Her head tilted slightly, like she'd been waiting for that, but didn't know what to do with it. She gave a small laugh, thin and wavering. "You're too young to mean that." "Maybe," I admitted. "But I do." The words weren't polished. They weren't enough. But they were the truth, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide it. We sat there, the silence between us no longer heavy, but alive, full of everything unspoken. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, and for a moment she looked lighter, like laying it all out had taken some of the weight off. Then, almost imperceptibly, her hand slid closer across the step. Not reaching for me, not quite, just closer. I didn't think. I just let my fingers find hers. Her hand was cool, mine warm, the contact so small it could have been an accident, but it wasn't. We didn't move after that. Didn't need to. No declarations, no promises. Just two people sitting side by side, knowing they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The quiet wrapped around us, not sharp, not dangerous, just final. The kind of silence that says, "This is it." And when she finally rested her forehead lightly against my shoulder, it felt less like a collapse and more like an answer. It's strange, looking back now. If you'd told me a year ago that a woman twice my age would change the way I understood myself, I would have laughed. I would have brushed it off, said something about how people like her and people like me don't cross paths, at least not in ways that matter. But she did matter. She still does. We never had a grand declaration, no cinematic kiss in the rain, no moment that tied everything together in a neat bow. What we had was quieter, harder, and, if I'm being honest, more real. She once told me I made her forget herself. I think about that a lot. At first I took it as something dangerous, like I was pulling her away from the person she fought so hard to be. But maybe forgetting yourself isn't always about losing. Maybe sometimes it's about laying the burden down, even for a moment, and remembering you're still human. And me? I thought obsession was the only way I knew how to care for someone. That constant ache in my chest, that restless need to be near her. But what I didn't see was how it softened into something else. Not less intense, not less consuming, but steadier. Guilt turned into responsibility. Want turned into respect. I stopped chasing her in my head like she was a finish line. Instead, I learned how to sit in the same silence with her, and let that be enough. Love, or whatever you want to call what we share, wasn't about fixing her or proving myself or overcoming some gap in years. It was about showing up again and again in small ways that mattered more than words. Sometimes that looked like a broken car door. Sometimes it was just coffee in a booth at midnight. And sometimes it was nothing more than a hand resting against mine in the dark. People talk about love like it's fireworks, but for us it was more like embers, quiet, glowing, the kind of heat you only notice when the world goes cold around you. I don't know what the future looks like. Neither of us does. And maybe that's the point. We aren't chasing certainty anymore. We're just letting it unfold, one quiet moment at a time. What I do know is this. She made me see that love isn't about age or timing, or rules that strangers write for you. It's about the way someone's presence rearranges the air in the room, the way silence with them feels louder than anyone else's words. And if you've ever had someone like that, someone who makes you forget yourself and remember yourself all at once, you know exactly what I mean. So tell me, have you ever had a person who changed the way you see love?